If you've been following my work, and in particular the case study reviews for juniors and midweight and senior designers, you probably noticed this overarching theme, and it has nothing to do with the quality of outputs, how good the UI looks like, or how good the solution looks like, or how presentable it is, or what the steps you took if you did personas or you didn't do personas. What it has to do, and the biggest issue I see, is that designers who are just starting out look at the challenges backwards. And in this video, I'm going to unpack exactly that so you don't make that mistake and kind of position yourself in the right way so that the outcomes are top notch. So you probably have noticed me in the reviews highlight that the solution doesn't have to be an app. There is a bigger issue behind that, because a lot of juniors who are starting out, they come from the goal of getting a job. And coming backwards from the goal is the right thing to do whatever you want to achieve. You always need to set the goal, and then you need to work backwards and set those steps up so that you take each and every step forward, and then it leads you closer and closer to the goal you want to achieve. So it makes sense to produce apps or UI design or product design and document it well so that you have the evidence to land the interview, to get the offer, and then to land the job, right? It does make sense. But what the issue here is that if you're, let's say, a designer, and you looked at all these different portfolios, you notice that, oh, this portfolio has a lot of apps. This portfolio has a lot of Apple Watch type of applets, or this portfolio has a lot of websites. And you notice that those people are successful, that those designers got the job. You're going to bias and prime yourself that you need to get the same exact portfolio in place, or it has to look a certain way. It has to be presented in that specific light. In reality, it doesn't, but because you primed yourself that you need those apps, now every challenge you're going to take on, every solution you're going to make from now on is going to be apps or websites. My issue is that growing designers try to work backwards from creating an app, and then they look for the problem to solve and try to backwards engineer and bias the research and look for the themes and almost do competitive analysis to see exactly what their app could do to add value to the user. You might ask why, because that's one way to actually shape experience. I agree with that, but it doesn't mean it's the right one. And I'm going to give you a very specific example to illustrate this. If you have a car and you drive somewhere far away and you need to find a parking spot, and this is your parking experience, which begins at home when you plan, your time frames, your budgets, things of that nature. How soon do you need to get there? How much time do you need to dedicate? When you arrive there and you look for that spot, you look at the signage, you look at the layouts, you look at the distance between the parking space and where you need to get to. You consume and try to evaluate all these different things. They could be digital, like let's say your actual wallet. Maybe you have a loyalty card, which is a plastic RFID, which gives you access to that specific parking lot. Maybe a parking lot has cash register, or maybe it's card only. Maybe it has a self-serve point where you input coins and you check out. And you can immediately see how many factors there are. And what happens if, let's say, everything is successful or one of the parts doesn't work. And if I arrive at that parking lot and I, for example, have an unhappy fact happen, that I forgot my wallet, or I don't have my phone to access the app to book it up, or I have no cash, or maybe my card is not accepted, maybe the register is broken, or that self-serve terminal is broken. So you could park up, you could go to your destination, come back, and then you finalize that experience and you get home, let's say. And between point A and point Z, that end of the journeys, of that experience, I completed so many different tasks, and each and every task could have presented pain points and opportunities for you to add a solution. You could have added app for each of them, or you could have added app for all of it, or perhaps there had to be no app. Maybe it's a process improvement or a website or omni-channel experiences of apps and websites, and maybe something like a hardware wallet or the actual hardware of the card which you're going to use to, let's say, tap in, tap out. There's so many ways to skin it. But my point here, and why I'm making such a lengthy example, is that you first need to consider the problem area end to end and then identified which of those segments you're trying to solve and prioritize. Because in real world, you're not just gonna go ahead and just make an assumption that app is gonna solve it all and then ideate on the features and the solutions. It's so much more complicated. And so what would look good here? It's finding the problem to solve, it's framing it, it's understanding exactly what you're gonna target and what you're gonna ignore, and only then picking a specific channel, a specific method, a specific tool which you want to use to actually solve it. And I understand that you might just start it like a few months ago, and only thing you designed so far is apps. Therefore, you default to that and you try to solve every problem with an app or see exactly where you could make the app. Try to, for a second, for a moment, pause that and just forget what you learned so far. Try to focus on that next iteration, your next evolution of your skills, and think much more holistically. If there's anything around you which you're passionate about, or people around you which actually lack something, go do that. Diverge in all the different directions. Try to exactly see where the most opportunity there is to actually improve something. Then and only then pick the right method, and then document it along the way. And your case study, even if you're gonna end up creating an app, or it's just maybe you're gonna create a website and an app, or something along those terms, it doesn't really matter. They are gonna be much more informed, and they're gonna look much more credible and real life-like than, let's say, you would just start with an idea that you're gonna make a UI and now gonna go and find a problem to solve that. Because the hiring managers are gonna tell if it's real, if it's conceptual, if it's fake. They can tell if you faked some things. They can tell that you jumped from one activity to the next one way too soon. They can tell that you made too many assumptions. They can tell that you didn't highlight that. And that's what would keep you away from getting that interview. Because if you, having all the freedom in the world, don't make UX as it's supposed to be done, or don't arrive at the conclusions using the right methods, then chances are then you're going to be restricted within the business with all the different variables like the stakeholder wishes and washes and the actual users and how you engage with them. In the business, your hands are always going to be tied and always going to be restricted. So if you cannot do it right when you have all the freedom in the world, then you're certainly not going to get the invitation for the business case scenarios, because they're going to get much harder. And so if you're gonna take something away from this video, make it this. Don't take on and get inspired by that momentum to produce new features here and there. Try to think much more holistically. Try to slow down before you speed up. If you have a freedom to explore, do explore before you go for that specific solution just because it's cool, or just because you've seen someone else having that in their portfolio. That doesn't matter. What matters is that you know what you're doing and you're doing it right. And on that note, if you like this video, smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, leave a comment down below, and I'll see you next time.